The objective of the discovery is to make license policy visible to all project participants in the UI, and we'll see why that's important in a moment. Improve the information architecture. We have some UX research underway at the moment. Actually, we've had just a couple tests today where we're trying to test how the navigation's going with that. We've some interesting findings so far. And simplifying the UI to accommodate the user with different permissions and jobs to be done. And I'll get into why that's more important. So currently our UI right now is, when it comes to license compliance, is just in the merge request alone. And I just want to verify we're now recording this meeting, right? Because I know that was something from last time. We are?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you can only see this feature in the merge request. There is currently some work being done on clarifying that and making that a little bit better experience in terms of what is being seen here, but that's pretty much all that a developer might see. Otherwise, a project maintainer would need to go to settings in a project and then go to CI/CD and then license compliance, and that's found here. And that's the extent of our feature at the moment. So that's why this issue here of that we're doing an implementation right now is a big deal, because we're surfacing the licenses, we're leveraging our license scan. Something that's okay, yeah. So that's what's happening now. Something that makes this interesting, and I made an earlier point into consolidating our UI, so having as little UI as possible to accomplish as many jobs to be done for as many different users as possible. A thing that makes it a little bit challenging, and the reason why license compliance is separate from the dependency list, is because we have a dependency scan and a license scan. And Tatiana has been actually, if you look at the discussion in this one, she actually merges some of the findings together, because we, in the last milestone, added the ability to see licenses and dependency lists. So that's coming from license scanning, though, and vice versa. So we're going to run into some challenges, and they are as follows. Some lists that we see in one list or the other may not have the components linked. So that's one issue, and actually that's a wrong link. I'll go back and do that because I opened an issue for that. And then the other thing is that there's some language overlap between the two different scans, but there are some languages that there isn't overlap. For example, I think license compliance maybe does JavaScript and dependency scan doesn't. Maybe I have them backwards. So we're going to have a little bit of weirdness there, and in the future, we're going to want to communicate that better to our users that that's the case, especially if they have both of them configured. They may be under the impression then that these lists should be combined, because we're showing licenses one and licenses not in the other. There's cases where a dependency list would be filled up and a license list would be empty. So we want to try to get ahead of that. That is down the road, though. I'm just adding that sort of complexity. Another thing we've been doing is we have ideated from, you may remember from previous sessions on some, this is the wrong issue, but there's a classification issue out there, and we had some classification terms that we landed on. The most essential thing there is that we don't want to use the term approval for a license, because we don't want it to get confused with the approval feature. So it's a pretty, I would say that this kind of links to like some things that, you know, we really want to consider, things that are happening now, just so we're all aware of where the feature is. So that's all kind of background to kind of queue up for where we are with the next steps with the discovery that me, Mo, and Fernando are working on. And some of the considerations that we have here are, how can we bring policy to that list? So the user has gone to CI/CD and settings and applied policy to different licenses. And so now that we have a list that's shown to all developers, we want to bring what that policy may have been applied to that list. So that's going to be one thing that we want in terms of it showing to all participants. But we could also leverage that same list to improve our information architecture and simplify our UI by making that same list to the maintainer the ability for them to apply policy. So now they can, the experience is a lot easier because they can, if they have everything configured correctly and it's supporting languages and so on, the maintainer can come and see licenses that are already in a project and apply classifications. And then they could also proactively add licenses that may be out of compliance or add compliance. So that's our goal with this discovery. I had very preliminary discussions with Mo, and his thoughts were immediately, that we will probably need to break these up into different issues. I will know more. We have a sync, Mo and Fernando and I, later scheduled. So we'll figure out what that game plan is. But some of the considerations that kind of came up that I think research and product we could maybe get together and figure out is like, who is our ideal customer for this? Since so much is out there, who do we want to prioritize our efforts for? And yeah, this is like I was saying for Mo, but what I mean by that is for using GitLab as a test project. Like let's say GitLab was our customer. After talking with the compliance team and stuff, we have some technical challenges why they don't use license compliance, but let's say that they could use us and that we wanted to make these licenses here that GitLab says are unacceptable if we wanted to add those to a project. At a project level, it wouldn't be such a terrible experience because this is just for the GitLab EE. And so GitLab could go to that project and apply those projects, and those could be blacklisted or whatever. But if we're going for larger customers, we may want to consider thinking about adding policy at a group level, or yeah.
There is that issue. So in my mind, I definitely want to go there, but I sort of want to make it work well for project first. And then as soon as we have that pattern, I'd love to then see, like, can we roll that pattern up? And then, because it's going to get more complicated, because if we apply it at the group level, there's going to be a couple considerations. Like the first one is, am I setting a default or am I setting a force? And what I mean by that, obviously there needs to be better terminology. But if I set something at a group level, maybe I'm just trying to set like a default and you can change it at the project level. Or maybe I'm saying like, no, y'all, this is company policy. This is the minimum, that you have to have. You can add more at your project level, but this is the minimum as opposed to the default. So I sort of want to have a pattern first for a project. And once we've got the ability to kind of interact a little bit better there, then yeah, I want to. And this is not just for license compliance. This is ideally for all of our policy enforcement tactics. I want to get them at project and then start moving them up to group.
I agree with that direction as well, because I think it'll be even more than just the policy stuff. I think security scans as well will fall into that. As we start selling and having customers at larger and larger enterprises, the individual users who are actually using the projects, building things, are going to be different than the people setting, thou shalt use SaaS license compliance.
And I actually consider
they're not going to go in a single project to configure and add those settings.
And I actually consider that, to that question right there, Sam, that you brought up an excellent point. Who's the user? Who's the target customer is the question you asked. And I think it really depends on the setting the policy portion. That's going to be like a compliance audit person. So either a security analyst in charge of compliance or audit, whereas all the MR stuff, the primary person, the developer. So for those two different displays of the same feature, we have two different audiences. So I want to optimize the one for developer and the other for a security audit, security compliance person.
Okay, that makes sense. And thanks for that feedback, because we'll take that back to our discovery and do it in that direction. But I did want to surface that as well. Yeah, and going with the group level has its own challenges, just like we found out with the group dashboard, for example. Like, how do you know which ones are even configured? So if you have 10 projects in this one, you have a configuration problem just like we had here, and just showing that this is what we did for that. So for now, the takeaway is to keep focusing on projects. Who do you think we could like test this on then? Like, do we want to test it on a small size market, or, you know, to kind of bootstrap our license compliance feature, since it is at the project level, small to mid-sized market? Like if we start doing testing.
We've actually had people specifically ask this type of question, salespeople and account management people. So what I think could potentially be interesting, if you are able to do this, is get a whole bunch of like medium to hi-fi mock-ups together, ping account management and salespeople and be like, so if, have people asked about, you know, policy and, you know, company policy enforcement around licenses or dependencies, because you can say like, right now we don't quite do, you know, both, but we'd love to talk to them and see if we can fish up a couple people to actually have them do like a, I don't know, call it click through or discuss through or whatever.
I have to imagine there's probably some internal customers we could use here as well. Olivier might know specifically, but I'm thinking engineering managers would probably have input on this, or if there's someone inside of engineering or another department that's responsible for compliance and licensing.
Well,
I think that would
our
be a good-
compliance department is responsible for compliance and licensing, so they're definitely our internal customer. They've already told us like, we don't love you. So we definitely, they're the number one people to ask, and I know we've talked to them once and we'll talk to them again. But I think for additional.
So some clarifications there. Yeah, we definitely, I've talked to them quite a few times with Candace Cerisi. So we've grown so much that our compliance policy at the moment is changing. It was with legal, it's gone to compliance, and right now the official answer is we're figuring it out. Security, I went to the office hours and security compliance office hours, and they're not dealing with this at the moment, and they redirected us back to development. So the best resource that we do have about what we have here is this page actually, that's really great. How we handle license compliance, we've used Omnibus. I'm gonna talk to Marin. I'm trying to get a hold of him because he built it. So I will follow up on that, just because it would be great to start dogfooding this in some level, especially since we have now the disallow feature. Oh, I'm sorry, where is that? So we actually have licenses here. Granted, they're in different versions, and I'll actually come to something about that in a moment. But there is a dogfooding opportunity here, and let's keep sniffing it out. But Candace it's a work in progress. So the last point that I have on here is like,
sorry, sorry to interrupt. I just want to raise again that there's been a new group created within the managed stage, which is a compliance group. So thinking about all this compliance policy workflow, they should probably be bubble up to that group, because we might have a generic approach for all the features of the product.
You said manage?
Yeah. I'm adding a link in the chat if you want.
Yeah, I have an unrelated question too about, well, somewhat related question about that too, is like, there's so much overlap with package that we might have a dependency list.
I actually am scheduling a call with that team next week or the week after. I can CC you in case you're free to attend. I expect this actually to continue and to actually increase, because honestly, security is not a standalone thing. Security is baked into every single stage. So as each stage gets more mature and as we get more mature, there's going to be tons more overlap. So we definitely need to be having more discussions and then kind of figure out, like, you know, how do we work together on some of these items.
A quick distinction between packages and what we are doing in the dependency list is the packages capabilities allow you to create packages, like create a Ruby gem from your project, create an NPM package from your project, a bit like you can create Docker images from your project and you have the container registry. on our hand, the dependency list is showing the packages that your project is using, which is a bit different.
I think that they're also planning to incorporate some other items in, so for bill of materials type purpose, because if you're packaging something that contains other packages, you want your BOM to contain everything. So there's a portion of overlap in there.
Quick time check. We have 7 minutes left in this meeting. Should we move on?
I only have one last point, and that is that as our technical capabilities are getting much better, Mo did a great write-up last milestone about that. One thing that could help this situation, because there's different versions of licenses and so on, is there's the ability to actually make a note here. So similar to how we do it with vulnerabilities, and that might appear something like this. So why is something blacklisted? Hey, in this situation, it's out of compliance with HIPAA, something like that. Then the developer has some idea of that. So that can kind of mitigate some of the complexity that we have with not being able to specify the exact versions of licenses and so on. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts to mitigate that, or if that could be a helpful one, or just any other thoughts in general. Otherwise, we can move to the next item.
I mean, I think as we get towards maturing the dependency scanner, we're going to be allowing hopefully blacklisting of specific dependencies, which is I think where we're going to start getting into versioning. So this may not always, like, it may in the future be like a layered thing, like I can ban certain licenses and then I can permit certain licenses but ban certain versions of things. So there will be layers later, but that's not right now, because by January apparently we have to get the license compliance to complete. So yay.
Okay, and I'd love to talk about that more in depth separately. So because we should define what that means.